If you're like so many people, including me, you've got your company's data across several different platforms. In my case, I've got a CRM, I've got an email, I've got a training course platform. In fact, my business data is on multiple platforms and I don't really have control over it. This is a problem because we are more and more reliant on data. In fact, 90% of the world's data was generated just in the last 2 years, according to my guest today. He's a data expert joining us from Birmingham, Alabama. We're joined by data coach Graeve, Paul Graeve, who is the founder and CEO of a company called the Data Group. Welcome.
Howdy. Thanks for having me here today. Privileged to be here.
Look, it's great to have you because data is probably a bit like accounting. One of the things that most of us, I put myself in this camp, don't really do very well. And yet, as a business, the information about the company is really the tea leaves. It's telling us how well we're doing, how well we're going to do. So, David, do you want to just take us through data as a business owner? What should be, first of all, our mindset, and then what should be our approach so that we're in control? And ultimately, if we want to build a business to sell, we need to have control of the data, don't we? So take us through at the beginning the mindset we should have about data, and then help us to understand how we can start to take some control.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you asked about 10 questions in there, so let's go back.
I realize all my data points are all over the place. Let's start with mindset. You've been running businesses in the data area for nearly 30 years. So help us first of all with mindset. What should we be thinking about when it comes to data?
Yeah, and that's why I call myself Data Coach Graeve. I've been starting and running data companies for over 30 years now. And that's what I've realized in helping so many companies and leaders with their data is that they believe this lie because they've been listening to the technology and data people, that this is really complicated and they don't understand it and they need to stay out of it and just kind of let IT alone. And this is what as a data coach, I'm trying to tell leaders is, look, data is incredibly simple. It has three ingredients, just like Gravy does. Data has strings, dates, and numbers. That's it. The strings are the descriptions, the dates are when it happened, and the numbers are your KPIs, your measurements. And so that's all there is to data. And definitely, if you are smart enough to be a leader, if you're smart enough to start and run a company, you're way, way smarter than you need to be to lead your data for your company. And this is what this is the mindset we really need to have as leaders, is that our data is one of, if not our most valuable asset of our business, because what our data is the absolute truth about our business. We might have our own biases and opinions and visions and passions about our business. But then when you get into the systems and you extract the data and you look at it, that's the unbiased, real truth about where our business is and where it's going and what's happening. And so from that perspective and from that mindset, this is the truth about my business. And so it is an incredibly valuable, if not the most valuable asset about my business as I'm leading it. And so I can't not own it, and I can't not control it. I need to own it and control it and be able to use it efficiently and effectively. And that's really my message to leaders is you've got to own and control this data. And that's really difficult to do in today's cloud-driven, SaaS-driven world.
Well, I was going to say this idea of data, that it's no longer in one place. When I started my first business back in '95, I had a Blade server in the office and I had an ACT database.
Right.
And everything went in there. And at the end of the week, we used a tape to back that up. And I used to take that home on the weekends in case we had a fire. I mean, it was that old, right, in Singapore.
That's good. You had a good disaster recovery plan. Very nice.
It was good. But of course, now you talk about SaaS and no one really has control. We're all renting. So how do we, first of all, identify the different data types or formats or silos? Do you want to take us through that first? And then we can look at how we can start to build consolidation and dashboards.
Yeah. So again, yeah, it's the mindset as you go into this. The SaaS is wonderful. I don't want to, we don't want to go back to the archaic days of, on-premise software, especially as entrepreneurs. All the SaaS systems out there, they're wonderful. They're easy. They're affordable. You put in your credit card and subscribe to all these amazing SaaS systems that can help grow your business. So I don't want to discourage that. But what I do want leaders to do, and especially entrepreneurs, is as you're subscribing and purchasing these SaaS solutions for your business, have that mindset of, wait a minute, I've got to own and control this data. I can't just let my data become siloed in 25 different silos that I don't own and I don't have access to, and I can't consolidate it all into one place. So as you subscribe to these SaaS systems, have this mindset of, well, how am I going to get my data back out of this system? We're going to be putting all of this, say, digital assets in here, or we're going to be putting our social media data in here, or we're going to have our CRM, whatever it is. How am I going to get that data back out? Do they have an API that I can extract the data? Do they have automated exports that will send me my data every night? So that just needs to be a thought process as you're subscribing and purchasing these SaaS platforms, is, making sure everybody just says, this is it. This is the features that we want, and this is the price point we want. There needs to be a third question in there: features, price point, and how do I own and control the data? Do not let that SaaS provider be in control and ownership of your data for many reasons. One, it's your most valuable asset. Two, you need to be able to use it efficiently and effectively, which means getting it out of that system and into a place that you wholly own and control. And three, someday you may want to leave that platform and go to another one. And if they have your data hostage, that makes that very difficult.
You are absolutely right about that. And you've, raised alarms for me there about all the different disparate places that the data is.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, then, let's just think about your place, your vault, where you're going to house all of that. In the old days, I talked about having a blade server and we put it all on there. But also we just ran one or two hero applications and everything else is in print. Now you might have a CRM, you might have a sales platform, you may have a purchase order procurement platform. How or what do you do to kind of aggregate all that content then, Coach?
Yeah. So just a little bit of history. I mean, going back, you keep talking about the blade servers and the tape backups.
I'm dating myself. I apologize.
No, it's good. I'm right there with you. I think we're in the same age category. But so, it used to be very, very difficult to do what you need to do now, which is own and consolidate all that data in a single place. Before, we didn't have, one of the beauties of the cloud is we now have these very simple cloud-based data warehouses that you can consolidate all your data into. Building a data warehouse 10, 20 years ago was incredibly difficult. We had the wrong tools for the job. And that's why most data warehousing projects failed. I mean, it's over 75 to 90%, depending on, which statistic you look at, which study you look at, of data warehousing projects were total failures, and the ROI was negative. And so, that's one of the reasons people like data warehouse. That sounds terrible, because it used to be, and it used to have a terrible ROI. But today, with tools like Snowflake, which we love, we're a Snowflake partner, the data group, we try to push all of our customers onto Snowflake. It makes it so simple and so easy to load your data, consolidate your data, transform your data, and make it very efficient to use it effectively. So that's the great part, is there's great data warehousing tools out there now that are so easy and affordable and simple, just like any SaaS platform. You can subscribe, pay as you go. Snowflake is very affordable to get started with. And then the other thing is, there's so many, SaaS has been around long enough now that it has matured enough that now there's providers that do nothing but connect to all these SaaS platforms and extract the data. And so you have a plethora of available tools that have pre-built connectors to almost any SaaS platform that you're going to subscribe to, that will make it very easy to connect to that SaaS platform, extract that data, and automate that process of loading that data into your Snowflake data warehouse. So that's really, the mindset is, what SaaS systems do we need? Subscribe. Is there a pre-built connector on one of these platforms out there that we can use to extract that data, get a Snowflake subscription? And as you add these SaaS platforms to your company, always make it where, hey, we're not going to lose ownership and control of our data. As we add these platforms, we're going to create the connectors, create the automated jobs to extract that data from those systems and load it into our, what I like to call a one version of the truth cloud-based data warehouse that is the truth about your company. And once you have the ownership of that data, going all the way to what you were talking about at the beginning, all the way to that idea that, hey, someday I sell this company. I mean, just imagine a private equity company looking at 10 different companies in your space and trying to decide which company they would want to purchase. You're going to put yourself with a strong foot ahead of all the other companies they might be looking at when you say, hey, we have total ownership and control of all of our data over here in this one version of the truth cloud-based data warehouse, Snowflake data warehouse. That's going to be a big selling point for your business.
Yeah, it is actually going to be, because your customer data, for example, transaction data, and all housed in the same place. And so Coach Graeve at the datagroup.cloud, for anybody that wants to just go straight to the Oracle, as it were. Can I use the word Oracle? I know it's another software, and they're not. But you talk about saying goodbye to siloed data and hello to unification. And the way you've now described it, you can, if you like, get automatic, I guess, data transfers from the various SaaSes. In it, I guess it's almost a glorified Zapier or Make style, where these integrations are happening on a scheduled basis. What does that mean in terms of dashboards? Because, in the old days, we'd have one platform, or even a spreadsheet with everything kind of feeding into a large pivot table. Because the goal at the end of the day is to have a dashboard, isn't it, of the business? Future sales, cash position, employees, stock in hand, and so on. Coach, tell us, how are you helping people to get a better understanding of the business? Because the data in itself is, as you say, honest, but it's what we can understand about our business from the data that really makes it of great value.
Yeah, absolutely. And back in the day when this whole idea of data warehouses started, that was the thinking. We're going to build a data warehouse so that we can build analytics, so that we can build dashboards, so that we can understand our data. And that still is a very critical piece of why you want to own and control your data and build your Snowflake data warehouse. And I want to talk about that, but I also just want to caution and say, once you've invested this time and energy in building this one version of the truth data warehouse about your business, the uses for that are just unlimited. And, whether it's AI, whether it's alerts, whether it's integrations, whether it's building apps and portals off of that data, there's no end to the possibilities once you have this data and you can effectively use it. Dashboards and analytics is just one of those uses. And it's one of the things I'm coaching leaders on is, look, we used to just think data warehouse, analytics, that's it. But no, I mean, once you have this data, there's an endless thing of possibilities. One of them that I say is kind of the low hanging fruit. I mean, you've kind of spent this money building this data warehouse, and analytics is something important, and dashboards are something very important, but that takes some time, that takes some investment. One thing that's very cheap and very affordable and kind of that low hanging fruit, and you can get some ROI right out of the gate, is alerts. So as you're loading the data into the warehouse and you're combining this data from all your systems, is a perfect opportunity to kind of set up some business rules to say, hey, if this data comes in and this transaction's way out of whack and it doesn't line up with our typical, throw an alert, throw an email. If a system's going down, if we're getting low on inventory, whatever the case, those alerts are so easy to do, and they make your company so much more proactive They help you to solve problems before your customers are even aware of them. I mean, one of the stories I talk about in my book is we had a customer in the morning, overnight, a job had failed and we didn't know about it. And the customer's entire e-commerce system went down. And of course, the customer's calling me and calling me very bad names and bringing my mother into the conversation and all of those terrible things that you don't want. And so, what you do is you learn from these and you say, hey, first of all, we need an alert and we need to know about this way before the customer does. And then second of all, you get the problem fixed before the customer's ever even aware of it. Or let's say you can't and the problem's still down. There's such a huge difference between the customer coming in and just seeing the problem, the system's down, and I have to call these knuckleheads and tell them, versus them coming in and going, the system's down, but I've already gotten 6 emails from them saying, we know the system's down, we're working on it, we're going to give you an update every hour. I mean, their system's still down and they're not happy, but they're a lot happier that you're already on it, you're already working on it. It's a game changer in terms of the perception with your customer that you're already aware of the problem and you're already working on it.
Yes,
so alerts are a wonderful thing to implement as soon as you get your data warehouse built. But yes, the dashboards are huge. And one of the things I coach leaders on is you not only need a dashboard for you, the leader, the C-suite of the organization. Yes, that's probably the first dashboard to work on. But what I try to tell the guys is, look, you need dashboards at every level of management in your organization. Because if you can get dashboards, say 3 and 4 levels down, and now those people are making better decisions and they're stopping problems before they go up the ladder, you're just calming the waters and you're enabling the C-suite to think more strategically, to focus on those bigger picture dashboards and strategic decisions, because you don't have so many problems and fires coming into your office, because you have dashboards at every level of management making better decisions, putting out fires before they start. So analytics, I'm just trying to get people to think analytics is not just for the C-suite. It's for everyone in your organization that is leading teams.
Yeah, and I remember that the statistic is incredible. It's something like 50% of all the time of a senior manager is spent fixing the problems that their junior people have. I remember when I ran my agency, I used to spend nearly half my time fixing things like computers, phones, email, so that they could be functional. Mm-hmm. And, if you can then create alerts, as you say, and probably omni-channel, right, through SMS, through email, through WhatsApp, then you can stop the problems before they get to be problems and escalated, and that's going to liberate the management time. So
and that's just such a one. Stop those problems before they happen, learn from them, fix them permanently. I mean, how many times you need to get the same alert before you go, hey, why don't we fix this so we don't get this alert anymore? Let's solve the problem that's driving these alerts. Yeah. And so it helps get your team, and alerts really help your team become more data driven, because as they see the alerts coming from the data, they see the problems coming, and now you can start to get them to see the value of the data. And hey guys, let's pay attention to what this data is telling us. This data is guiding us to problems that we need to fix. And so it helps kind of create that data-driven culture.
And I have to say, Coach, I'm really you've opened my mind, because maybe I opened the conversation with so many questions at once, just because my data is so distributed, and in my own mind, it's so fragmented. And this concept that you can have, if you like, a sort of a simultaneous and automatically synchronized set of data being centralized to a platform like Snowflake is a revelation to me. To be honest, I really didn't know that was possible. And I have got multiple platforms and have asked exactly that question: how have I got any control? And that's really very, very much a relief, to be honest, because you've also got the security issue, haven't you? That now, with the possibility of bad actors coming in, just tell us about business continuity and data, because so much of our businesses are tied up now in systems. If any one part of that system goes down, our whole business can be caught, and ransomware is a big issue. So how does data management and what you're doing help with business continuity from sort of a malware perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is, especially for smaller business, even medium-sized businesses, the problem's kind of solved for you. I mean, you talked earlier about how you had to take the tape home, because you had the blade server on premise in your office, and now, we don't have that problem anymore. We don't have to worry about, the fire in our office because all of our data is. So those are some of the benefits of the cloud, right? Is that we don't have to worry about this as much, and we don't really have to worry about the bad actors as much if we're using SaaS platforms. They're the ones that are in charge of keeping the bad actors out of our data that's housed in their platform. And then, like you said, we've got Zapier and Make and these pre-built connectors and integrators. They're responsible for keeping that data safe in transit. And then you got Snowflake, who's the largest data warehouse provider, and they're housing financial data and HIPAA data and all sorts of data. So they're going to be a lot better at protecting your data than you are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the wonderful thing is these companies are kind of solving that problem for you, which is allowing you to not really have to think about it and to focus on your business. So it's another real benefit of SaaS. There's so many benefits to SaaS. The problem is the scattering and the siloing of your data. And that's the one thing you got to pay attention to is these SaaS systems are wonderful. The cloud is wonderful. It takes all of these things off your plate. But if you're not intentional about, hey, I've got to own and control my data and get all this data unsiloed and get it into my Snowflake data warehouse where I wholly own and control it, it just gets away from you.
Yeah. Well, I feel very blessed, Paul, that you've come on the show to explain this and also to introduce the company that you've run for over 20 years that really helps take this burden from entrepreneurs and business owners. If we shift gears slightly to the entrepreneur side of life, I'm going to talk about the book you've got coming out, because part of what I'm interested in is how you build a brand for the company, but also as an entrepreneur, you build a brand so that one day you might transition and be known, as the entrepreneur, not just the company. Tell us about how you've been sort of building the brand for the data group, and what have you been doing to get noticed as a company?
Yeah, we've gone through several transitions in branding and ownership structure. You're going to learn a lot being an entrepreneur as long as I have about ownership structures and investors and venture capital and private equity, all those wonderful, fun things. Where I've come full circle over 25 plus years and finally kind of rebranding with the data group is that I want to just own the company 100%. That's not for everybody. Some people want to have investors and angel investors and venture capitalists and private equity and all those things for very good reasons. But I've been down those roads and kind of at a new period in my life where I just wanted to have 100% control of the equity. And so kind of branched out, took my team and rebranded the company as the Data Group. And we named it the Data Group because it's what we really decided, after 25 plus years of doing a lot of different things, a lot of analytics companies, a lot of dashboard companies, a lot of companies that kind of got into more of the user interface on top of the data. We decided to really just focus on the back end, on the data integrations, owning, controlling your data. We do have a great API platform in Foxtrot. So we love the integration part of the data and providing access to the data through our REST API platform that is our Foxtrot. But that's where we stay. We stay just in the owning, controlling, and effectively using your data. And then so that's why we call it the Data Group. And that keeps us locked in and that keeps us focused on what we do, which is that back end. And now trying to, kind of create this brand as a data coach and helping leaders really understand that data is simple, that they do need to own it and control it. And so I wrote this book called Data Driven Leader, and that's coming out later this year, and really excited about that. And just talking about all of these things data is the future, AI, however you want to look at it. AI and data is the future of your company. You're collecting more of it, but it's more and more scattered than it's ever been before. And we've got to come up with a plan and a strategy to effectively own it, control it, and use it. And that's why, the message to leaders is, hey, this is simple. You don't need to be intimidated by this. Data is not complicated. It's strings, dates, and numbers, and it's the truth about your business. And you've really got to own it and control it.
Tell us then about the book process. So you've got your hands full with the data group and it looks amazing. And I can see now you've really defined the proposition. Why go down the path of writing a book, which frankly is quite a lot of work? I mean, you could just do more podcasts, for example. You're great on these. Why would you go down the path and the pain of authoring?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I just had enough people telling me that I should write a book. I kept talking to people, kind of the same message, and all of these things that I've been talking about: owning your data, controlling your data, using your data. That's our data-driven leader mantra. And people just kept telling me you should write a book. And so I started looking into it. And yes, it's an elephant, and you can't eat it all in one day. You can't eat it all in a month. And you have to go into it with that philosophy that, hey, this is an elephant. I got to eat it one day at a time, and it's going to take a long time. And so I just would carve out time on my calendar every single day. It would just be writing time, writing, thinking, reflection time, and just had that, just religiously on my calendar. And it took 1.5 years, but I just chipped away at it every day. And if you decide to go down that journey, the one thing I would encourage is there are people out there that are unbelievable. They have a different brain than I do as an entrepreneur. I think our entrepreneurial brains were full of ideas, and the ideas just flow. And so when you start writing, you have that same entrepreneurial problem, is the ideas just flow, and you end up with just hundreds of pages of great stuff, but it's not organized. It doesn't flow. It's not structured into chapters, and it's just a bunch of stuff on a lot of pages. But there's these people that I found who can read all of that, and somehow they can remember what you said 40 pages ago and what you're writing about 40 pages later, and they can go, this content should be together in a chapter. And so those people were so helpful to me in the writing process, in helping me organize all of my ideas and thoughts into something that actually flowed and was a book. So don't be discouraged that, when you write, it's not flowing and organized like a book, because there are people that can help you with that.
Yeah.
So that's the one tip I would give to anybody writing a book is, you're not going to be able to do it alone. Like everything in life, and like building and starting a company, you're going to need a team, and you're going to need some really good team members to help you write a book as well.
Okay, getting a book coach, right? Did you do a ghost writer, or did you write it and have a coach to help you with the structuring? Because
No, proud to say it is 100% written by me. It is not written. There's no ghost writing, and there's no AI writing. I wrote the whole thing. I just had people that were really good help me organize it and structure it so that it actually flowed like a book and made sense. It didn't jump all over the place. So there's people that can really help you with that. And as entrepreneurs, that's just a real struggle we have, because our minds are just bouncing everywhere all the time.
Yeah, I think we're better at doing cartoons than doing full-length books, really. But but good on you. And as you say, once repetition built the narrative, then structuring that into the book, and then it's going to be a great platform for you. So look forward to that coming out. Paul, if there's a number one tip that you would give to me as an entrepreneur, from your experience now of 30 years running businesses, and we both go back to the sort of tape days, so we've survived. What would be your tip be for building a business?
Well, I'll give you two. I'll give you one kind of like just a generic entrepreneurial leadership tip, and then I'll give you one data tip. How's that?
Okay, sounds great. Two for the price of one.
The one entrepreneurial just leadership tip I would give is, and it's straight from John Maxwell, is just, you got to love your people. You can't lead people unless you love them. So your team, your customers, your partners, your vendors, you just got to love people, love working with them, love building relationship with them, and just not make it all about business. Make it about the relationship with them and get to know your people and genuinely show that you care about them. I get asked, like, I've had this same team with me, the same core leaders working with me for over almost 20 years now, over 17 years. And it's, and how do you keep the same team? Well, you pay them well, and you pay them more than they're worth, and you love them and you care about them, and you make them feel known and valued and heard and part of the team. And when you do those things, people aren't going to look to go anywhere else because they feel known and valued and heard and loved and compensated well. So that's my secret for that in terms of just leading well. In terms of data, it's what I've already been talking about is, SaaS is great, but have a mindset of owning and controlling your data and be intentional about using and leveraging the tools that are out there to harvest and mine the data from all of your siloed systems and get it into a Snowflake data warehouse where you can fully own it and control it and use it efficiently and effectively.
Great. I think that at the end we'll give you a company name because people may be saying, that's great. I think I'm just going to go to Data Coach Graeve for that. If you have a book or a podcast, Paul, what would that be? Would you recommend a book other than your own book, of course? What book or podcast would you recommend?
Oh yeah, that's an easy one. The Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. He's my favorite leadership guru, and I love his leadership podcast. He's great, and he's got great guests. And if there's one podcast, it would be the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast.
Okay, Craig Groeschel, we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you, because I will listen to that too. I haven't heard of that one yet. So that's fantastic to introduce a new one. If people want to get hold of you, it's a bit confusing because you call yourself Data Coach Graeve, but that's because of your surname, which is spelt Graeve, right? So it's Paul Kent, the county I'm from in England. Paul Kent Graeve. If people want to get hold of you, how can they do that?
Well, you can spell it correctly, or you can spell it the way my last name is spelled. Either way, it'll get to me, Graeve or Graeve at thedatagroup.cloud. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Just email me. And like I said, either spelling will work.
That's perfect. Well, they've got 2 data points, 2 kinds of spellings. Paul, Data Coach Graeve, thank you for joining me and opening my eyes to what's possible, and actually making me think, there's something I need to really think about doing, but also give me the reassurance that it's possible. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's really, really illuminating. I normally talk to people about how do they get noticed, and so Paul's story about how he's built the business was what was interesting. Then we started to dive into data, and I was like, wow, this is something that we really need to think about, because if we don't control the data, we might build a brand, but then have no measurement about how well it's surviving. But also, when it comes to an exit, Paul talked about this earlier on, owning the brand is one thing, but knowing the data points that brand can generate in terms of sales, revenue, margins, and so on is really going to be what the customers or the company that buys the company is going to be interested in. So we've been talking data. Yeah. Sorry, say that again.
I said it's going to be a huge differentiator for your business. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I thought let's have a little bit of a change from not just talking about marketing, but talking about data, because that is the underlying truth, as Paul has said. If you've enjoyed this show, it's been a little bit different, but I think you'll find it's been really, really rewarding. Please do share it with a fellow unnoticed entrepreneur, because we don't want anyone to go unnoticed. And until we meet again, I just encourage you to keep on communicating.